This can run a little long, so I'll try not to. Again, we're going to talk about America's Kansas City-wide digital network. And one of the things I started doing a few years ago,
there it goes.
My Elmer, Larry Staples, great human being, been around forever, very classy gentleman, and I hope I can conduct business and such in the same manner that Larry has done. And so I always give a shout out to Larry for Larry's List if you don't know it. And then we've thrown in some funnies, and so we've got all this good, wonderful AI stuff that's going on. And everybody's getting images made of themselves. I looked for one of these today. I was going to buy one, but nobody seemed to have one. And you might keep your eye out for it. This is kind of some new technology that's coming out. And I saw a few of these last night. Didn't see any this morning. So it is Hamfest season, and so everybody's got their carts and their gear and going around. Now this one I do want to buy. In fact, I've got my grandson trying to find that somewhere. We can all geek out on our Lego projects. And then I always get asked questions, even when I do a presentation on HF and stuff. What is running barefoot? I show them that. And then we just explain to it. And then I heard some of this negotiation going on this morning when I was looking around. It's like, $100, but it's at full blast. Oh, I got to have it. I'll take it home. So that's awful. And then here's what we think our ham chefs like. There's probably more than reality. I'm guilty. And then we're starting to get there. Oh gosh, digital mode. I couldn't get DMR off there, but I'm not anti-DMR. Digital's not real. And this is new, coming out next year. They told me the guys from POTA are going to spin off. They're going to do outhouses on the air. I was looking for one of these too today. I couldn't really find that. All right, now we're going to get into it. So again, my name's Brad Hurd. My call sign is Kilo Bravo Zero Lima Sierra Mike, Senior Network Administrator with Kansas City Wide. That's what we call it short. The official name is America's Kansas City Wide Digital Network. And in its present form, it's been around, we're going on 6 years now, but the network in general has been around for about 10. We originally just started out as the Kansas City Room when we were originally just a Wires X only. My background, I started my educational career. I thought I was going to be a RF broadcast engineer / next Gary Owens, Casey Kasem, Dick Clark. Through life events and things, found out I really didn't like doing that. So then I switched over to the medical field. But then I got drawn back into amateur radio and thought, well, I got the knowledge and I got the skills, so let's work on some repeaters and things like that. And so basically helped develop the RF side of things initially with KCY. My granddaughter made this for me. So, and a lot of these questions, these slides come up from questions. This is probably the 10,000th presentation I've given over the years. And so I try to get a lot of the questions taken care of. So basically, Kansas City Wide was born in the fall of 2020, roughly, Kansas City Room. I met up with another gentleman, Jerry, KC0KW, and Jerry and I had a little difference of opinion on how we wanted things to go. So we spun off. And then Rick, W0FH, joined us. He's our IT guy. Then Chris, KU0S, also does IT. And then we've got a couple of guys, David and John. They handle the talent. They handle the nets and things like that. And then Jen and I pretty much do the marketing and stuff. So we're self-funded. The 6 of us, basically, maybe 7, call the shots. We had some very specific rules and things in mind when we got started. And honestly, one of the guiding principles, and this will sound rough, but it'll tie in later, is it's our house, it's our rules. And then the second point was we didn't want to be like any of the other networks that were out there. And so we didn't want it to be a free for all. We just didn't want anything goes and things like that. And so we're the ones that make the decisions. Another misnomer about Kansas City wide, and we see it mainly on social media, is particularly with the Wires X stuff that's gone on the last couple of weeks, because we did originally start out as Wires X Room, and that's all we were. And we quickly found out the limitations of that platform. And so we have transitioned to Wires, or Kansas City wide is the network. And then each one of these modes is a fork off of that network. So if Wires X goes down, the network's not down, switch to DMR, switch to P25. Same thing, if Brandmeister has a server go down, the network's not down, just DMR, or like M17. If that goes down, that's all that's affected. Most generally, the rest of the network's going to be still up and running. And as you can see, we've got every link known to man until they come up with another one. So there's any way you can connect in. We're a digital only network. The only analog connection that we allow is Echolink. Everything else is, you can argue the hams over IP, but other than those two, everything else is digital. So that's why there's not an all-star node. There's no plans to be an all-star node because it's not digital. We even have a POC link now through Hamlink POC. It's hamlinkpro.com, I believe. And that's our newest one. NXDN and then the POC stuff got added just within the last few months. So again, just to go back, if any one of these can go down, we have some redundancy built in there. To date, knock on wood, the entire network has never been down. We've had some outages with Wires X. We've had, like when Brandmeister had the server go down, we had to switch to another server. But it's pretty robust. It's pretty stable. This is the breakup of our user base, and over 2/3 is YFSF. This guy's on hotspots, coming in XLX, whatever. The other third is kind of split between Wires X, whether it's PDN mode or whether it's through an HRI. And then the other modes kind of make up the other 10%. And so we kind of monitor this occasionally to just kind of see, well, what's giving us the most traffic. And for the last 6 years, it's been the YSF, where the hotspot market has really taken off. Even in fact, we're seeing a decline in the Kansas City area. We've got 50-ish repeaters that we own and maintain, and we're seeing their usage as far as the RF they're receiving, it's declining. These are just some shots of some of our sites and some of the folks that have kind of helped us along the way. This is a big powerhouse AM transmitter site, Kansas City, WHB. And they had abandoned their STL tower, and so we got to go up and play. Everybody always asks, hey, I've never been to a repeater site. What do repeaters look like? And so these are just different pictures of some of our sites. Some of the guys that climb the towers for us. And you can see they go from really nice to one stuck in a refrigerator, one's just in a shack. Some of the conditions that we have to put them in aren't the best. So there's just, like I said, it runs the gamut. It's kind of like if we get a new site and we go and assess it, this is what I like to do. So I was pretty proud of that dip. But anyway, or notch, I should say. And so that's a picture of Jerry, KC0KW. Like I said, he was the founder. He was the one that came up. He's semi-retired. His full-time job, he's an RF engineer. He helps maintain most of the radio and TV stations in the Kansas City market. And then occasionally we put him to the labor. This was a failed experiment for some of you RF geeks. This was a site that only had one antenna. And we tried to come up with our own combiner system to put two repeaters on a one antenna system. We got it to work so, but not to where it really made the original repeater had a great footprint. When we added the second, it diminished it quite, so it just didn't work. But just more picture things look like. This is David. You guys have probably talked to him. This is K0DSV. And as you guys do know, he is a blind ham radio operator. He's one of the ones that kind of controls the talent and does the net scheduling and things like that. Here, I think this was at the Sedalia, Missouri Regional ARRL Conference. There's our website. We can shorten it a little bit. KansasCityWide.com will get you to the same spot, but if you really want to type the whole thing out, it will get you there. That will have the most up-to-date information about the network and what's going on. Sometimes we'll get things out more timely on Facebook or Instagram, but for the actual definite concrete answer, always check the website. We do have, like I said, a Facebook presence. I don't think there's anything on here for Instagram yet. These are just all listing, which is on the website. This was taken right off there. All the ways that you can connect to the network. So if you're needing ID numbers, reflector numbers, things like that. Again, this is all on the website. This is a very old map system that we can't get anymore because they're not supplying the data. But this gives you an idea of initially when we started about 6 years ago. These were all the repeaters that were connected to the network. This is about a year old because we can't get the data anymore. That is all the connections to the network. This, in the last 6 years, not only are we the number one, we used to be number one in North America, we're number one in the world now, as far as the amount of traffic, number of connections. We're tied with the big Japanese CQ rooms on the Wires X side. But this is probably even bigger than Brandmeister. Kansas City Wide was born out of what Jerry and I had the idea of. We have I-435, which is a loop around the Kansas City metro area. And how Kansas City Wide started was we wanted it to be a repeater project that would provide handheld coverage no matter where you went inside that 435 loop. And as you can see, we've pretty much got it covered. These are all the repeater sites in and around the Kansas City area. These are just zooming in and different looks at where all of our, now the ones that are here in the center around Kansas City, most of those are the ones that we own and maintain. The ones that get farther out are through agreements with other clubs, individuals. And so as you can see, we've pretty much covered that 425 loop pretty well. And then if you go to our website, say you're coming up to Kansas City and you don't want to rely on your hotspot, you want to decide, well, which repeater can I use? You can go to the website. We've got coverage maps for every one of our repeaters. And this one's to the east of Kansas City. This I tried to update, but with the Yaesu conversion to 2.0 and the 1.57, I wasn't able to get an accurate number, but I don't know if you're familiar with doing PDN mode or Wires X mode. This is the Wires X dashboard. And so this is what you'll see. And we typically always run in the neighborhood of 120 to 140 Wires X connections. And it ebbs and flows. And then the big Japanese JACQ, I think room D, I think is their biggest one. They're about the same. So we're always constantly changing spaces. And if you use this software on your Barnes X node, you can sort all the rooms over here by clicking on the account, and it'll list them by who has the most connections. And so us and the it is the Japan CQ room. We're always trading spaces. That's changed just a little bit because some folks have already went over to the 2.0. We've stayed at the 1.57, just because the 2.0 still isn't stable. This is always a hot topic because as we started to grow and as we got bigger, and like I said, one of our guiding principles is that we didn't want to be like any other network out there. And so a lot of people complain about the nets that we have on the network. And they're like, well, this guy was rude to me. He told me to shut up so he could start his net. Well, yeah, we give priority to that. The net control people are told they can do that. That is their time. They shouldn't be rude. And when I went back and listened to it, we record everything 24/7. The net control operator was not rude. But it's there by design because that gives us structure, keeps the rogueness away. And so we do turn down, we get tons of requests. Well, I want to do a net about my cat. No, sorry. So we turn down more than we accept. Because two, we just don't want it to be 24/7 in net. We want it to be open rag chew time and things like that. And so again, on the website, there's a listing of all of our nets. I remember when David first came to us and he's like, I want to do a net about fishing. And he has fish sticks on Tuesday night. It was one of the first nets we started doing. We all thought he lost his mind. And honestly, at that time, we were like, yeah, what the heck, it's 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night, it'll fill an hour. Yeah, we'll let him try. And it turned out, and still is one of our most popular nets. And they talk about nothing but fishing. We had another one that's kind of segued into something else that was supposed to be about food and cooking and stuff. And they still talk about that, but we got a net that they talk about cars and motorcycles. And so there's just a little bit of everything for everybody. We now have nets 7 days a week. Most of the time, you can count on a net Monday through Friday, 4:30. There's always usually something there. There's usually something in that, until about 8 o'clock at night. We have technical nets. We have an HF antenna net on Sunday nights. We have 2 nets dedicated to just digital. One's more of the single board computer stuff. The other one's actually kind of geared more towards the Yaesu Wires X stuff, but they'll talk about other things. There's a Parks on the Air net. You're not going to like them all, but there's probably one on there that you like, 1 or 2 anyway. And again, this schedule, we've had a couple of changes here recently, and it hasn't been updated yet. I mean, we even got the diner net. I think they start at 4 in the morning. They run until about 5:30. And they'll do a virtual breakfast. People are buying each other cups of coffee and ordering pancakes and stuff. It's if you're ever up, it is kind of interesting to listen to. Our Hamfest net, just for the ladies, it's getting more popular. Starting, in fact, this is the first year Jennifer, that's normally the net control, is going on vacation. And we'd always scramble to try to find somebody to fill in for her that was not a male. And this year, got 2. So we're going to have a couple ladies doing guest hosting on that, and it continues to get bigger. What have we got? Of course, you guys have all probably heard John out of Florida, KZ4JON. Alice's restaurant. Alice said she needed to take a sabbatical, and so she's kind of, at least for the summer, I don't know if she'll return. So anyway, like I said, all this is on the website. We've got a couple of international nets that are running out of the UK. So yeah, there's a RV and travel net on Sundays after the HF net. They talk about train travel. They talk about RVs. They talk about amateur radio in their RVs while they're out on the road. It's really pretty interesting. Another common complaint that we get is, why do I have trouble checking into nets? Well, digital is not like analog. It's not like HF when you got this wall of sound that the net control operator hears, literally it takes the first station to get through, and that's all they hear. So they're not being rude, they're not ignoring you, they just probably haven't heard you because somebody else beat you into it. Another thing that we did find out, if you're coming in via a repeater, and it's just the nature of the MMDVM cards, even though we've shortened it as much, we have a repeater down on the Kansas City Plaza, and a net control operator uses that one. And he was talking to another guy that was using the same repeater, and nobody on the network could get in because for microseconds, when they unkey, the MMDVM card doesn't go back to listening to the network. And so it kind of creates an inherent delay. And on a very, very popular network, it can just be hard to get in. It's very, very busy. You just got to keep trying. It doesn't mean something broke. It just means it's a little bit harder to get in. This is another big one that we get. Why do we hear one side of the conversation? Most of the time, it's the Yaesu guys. And most of the time, it's because they're in voice wide mode. And the problem is the bridges between all the other modes will only accept digital narrow. And so usually it's just like, hey, you were in voice wide, because we can go back and check. You know, please use digital narrow, the problem goes away. They have gotten a little bit different. We've noticed with some of the XLX server updates, if it's not a valid call sign, and by valid, I mean if you've got a lot of people like to put their name behind their call sign or the radio or something. And it doesn't like that if there's a dash or a slash or something. So it just will not pass the traffic on through. So things are changing. And Yaesu is actually cracking down a little bit more. There's the FT1 and the 991A, when you first turn them on, doesn't require you to put in your call sign. Or I think it does, but it doesn't with the digital side. It doesn't move it over there. And so they'll transmit FT991A or FT1X. Well, that's not a valid call sign, so it won't cross. And then what's even funnier is eventually the Yaesu servers go, and they ban you from the entire network. And so then you got to deal with Yaesu on that. But so that's usually the biggest reason. You're either in voice wide, if you got the slash or the dash, or you've got something jacked up with your call sign. And then I got ahead of myself there. We will get this question too occasionally. Sometimes when you unkey, especially only on a repeater, only on a non-Yaesu repeater, you'll kind of hear the last syllable. And that's just an inherent MMDVM with the Motorola conversion. It doesn't go out over the network. Only you hear it. I do it. You just need to hold the PTT button just a half second longer, and it goes away. It reminds me I'm quick keying. And on a network this large with so many connections and internet and everything else, quick keying just does not work. So we just have to remind ourselves to slow down. We do have some do's, and this is what I was talking about. You key up, and I want to meet the guy, and I understand why it came up. There was this old habit, and I think it got started in the late 70s, early 80s. This is they unkey KB0LSM, and then they unkey. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because what it does is when you unkey, everything comes down. Key back up, everything's got to come back up. And so it just builds inherent latency. You can say, hey, this is KB0LSM, just don't unkey in between, and just be, again, a good practice is when you key up, give it a breath, give it a beat, a second and a half, 2 seconds, then start talking. And then when you're done talking, wait that second and a half to unkey. And that just keeps the system happy. It keeps everybody happy, and things just work out better. But it's a bad habit. We all came up with analog. We all came up with, I'm going to try to get in there before that guy. And, but again, sometimes slow down, just take a breath. And then we have some do nots. And this is what I was just talking about. Just don't go, like I said, this is, and then let everything drop and then come back. Just do it in all one complete sentence. This gets a lot of people in trouble, especially in the Kansas City market, because just about everybody out there, and including Yaesu, tells you you must use this button. Well, if you're up there on one of our repeaters or using one of our systems, or maybe I'm not sure what you guys have down here, if they're Motorola boxes or Yaesu boxes, you don't have to hit that. You don't have to go there. Every radio's got it, pretty much with the exception of two. And that's the FT70 and the 920 even has it. So that's big. Don't hit it. Don't press it. You don't need to put your radio in the X. I'll explain why. So all of the repeaters that we own and maintain are locked to our room. You cannot change it. There's no information that you're going to gain from it other than it's going to tell you that it is Americans Kansas City wide. What initially happened, not so much anymore because there's been upgrades, is you go along and like, okay, I'm going to get on Kansas City wide. I hit the DX button. It makes the handshake with the repeater. It takes the repeater out of the network originally for about 3 minutes. Then it'll boot you. Then it reconnects to the network. We've kind of figured that out, so it doesn't do that anymore. But again, on a repeater that is not steerable, so I don't know how you guys are down here if you allow it to move around, but if it's locked onto Kansas City wide or America Link or whichever room, you don't have to hit the DX button. There's no reason to do it. Most people don't use the little news feature. You can put photos up there. Most people don't use that. Now, if you are on a repeater system that allows you to change the room around, then you do need to use that DX button. Digital ID, we don't do anything with that. It's all zeros, double zeros, both receive and transmit. People get the DGID confused with the DPID. And the DPID is strictly for the Yaesu DXR2 repeaters. And unless you own and maintain one, you don't need to mess with that. Group monitor function. If you haven't played with this, it's pretty cool. We discourage it on the network just because I don't know if you've messed with it. If you have Yaesu products and you want to play with it, get with your buddy, get on a simplex frequency, and put both radios into GM mode. Basically, about every second and a half, it pings. And it'll send out, it'll show you, oh, he's 2 miles from me, to my northwest, and things like that. Initially, in the beginning, the network was carrying all those pings. And so we was like, oh, don't do that, don't do that. But now, not so much. But we still discourage the use of it. And then we always get asked, do I want to buy, I'm a new ham, do I want to buy analog, do I want to buy fusion, do I want to go DMR, do I want to go D25, do I want to go N17, NXDN, any of the flavors, D-Star, and basically find out what people are using in your area. I mean, I'm a Yaesu guy, all my HF gear is Yaesu, I've been a Yaesu guy for a very long time, but on the repeater side, when I first got started, I was a DMR guy. Yaesu was HF and DMR because we didn't have any fusion stuff. Everything was DMR. So again, just in your area, what's most popular? If you're a large metro area like down here where you have some different options and things, join a club, find out what they're doing. And there's always this is HF related, but everybody argues DMR is the best. D-Star is the only way to go because it's the oldest. NXDN is starting to gain some traction now. It's whatever's in your area. Go with that, and you just don't want to buy a new radio and then not be able to talk to anybody. This is as of the 1st of this year. We were just kind of curious, and I didn't have time. I was going to look at Oklahoma, but I didn't have time. And it's kind of an interesting breakdown of the repeaters in Kansas and Missouri. Because as you know, Kansas City straddles the state line, and most of the repeaters in that other column are analog and all-star. almost every one of them in that column is linked to something via All-Star. But as you can see in the Kansas side of things, Fusion by far outweighs DMR. Missouri, its Fusion's just a little bit more, but DMR is really heavy in Missouri. I looked at a couple other states a couple of years ago, and it's really regional. East Coast, West Coast, still heavy DMR P25. Florida's heavy NXDN. So again, it's regional. This one I'm a little bit excited about. It doesn't really pertain to you guys, except for maybe if you come up in the Kansas City area. One of the biggest problems we had when the network blew up and got as busy as it could, when we'd go out to work on repeaters, we had to shut the network off. We couldn't work on it. And so we kind of came up with a second network, and it's called Kansas City Local. And it's for RF connections only. There will be no hotspot connections. There will be no any digital bridges. The only bridge we have, one of the local DMR groups came to us and said, hey, we're kind of not, our repeaters aren't too busy. Can we merge the two together? So KC Local is C4 FM and DMR, and the information is on the website for those repeaters. No nets, again, RF connections only. I won't hit it too hard unless you guys are really coming up, but we've got about a dozen repeaters now that are on this, what we're calling KC Local. And this is just a footprint of the KC Local repeaters. So it covers pretty much the KC area. We always get asked about this. What's the difference between a digital signal and an analog signal? Nothing. You can see it's all the same. The only difference is you have a vocoder in this radio that takes your audio, converts it to ones and zeros, then you have a vocoder in this one that converts it back so you can hear it. One of the advantages that I found when I decided I wanted my own repeater, and this was even before Kansas City Wide came about. I'd been running an older, it was a boat anchor, keeping it together, baling wire and tape, because somebody gave it to me. And I mean, this thing it was struggling to work. And so I was like, I'm going to switch to DMR. And so I had a 100-watt UHF analog repeater. I put on a DMR repeater at 25 watts, same feed line, same altitude, everything. My coverage area increased by about 3%. My equipment was much more happy. And not only just because it was newer, but it didn't have to work as hard. And so that's the real advantage to the digital platforms. You can argue which one's best all day long. The only big difference is, like in the old analog days, when you're running out of repeater and you start getting staticky and the picket fencing and all that, you don't get that with digital. When you reach its end, you're done. There's not the static. There's not the you're down in the weeds. No, either you're there or you're not. And so that's the deal. And that's kind of what this graph is showing you, the quick drop off on analog. I mean, it's quick. Where with digital, it's much more slow. And that is really true. Again, these are all the modes that are bridged, servers that you can connect into Kansas City Wide with NXDN. The POC stuff that's now starting to gain traction. A little bit about the POC. There's the talk pods that are on that. What's it, virtual ham, I think they're calling it now. I think it had some weird name when it first started. Those are not compatible. The gentleman that we joined forces with to provide the POC link, he used to be a part of Ham Shack Hotline, and he's out of Florida, because the problem when we were getting approached is like, well, how do I use my POC radio in Kansas City Wide? Nobody was verifying that you were a licensed radio operator. So you buy your talk pod, they give you the SIM card, you're on. Well, the problem with that is on strictly a POC network, doesn't matter. But because we're transmitting in RF, you got to be a licensed operator. And I spent quite a bit of time trying to talk to the folks in China And I think because of the language barrier, but they really had no desire to verify and set up kind of a special thing. And so through some networking, I found out John Ford down in Florida, and he is creating this POC network just for ham radio operators. The downside is not all the equipment's compatible. And he does it kind of like EchoLink, the D-Star guys. He does the verification. So if you say, hey, I want to get on POC for amateur radio, I want to use your stuff, he has to be able to look you up on Radio ID or QRZ to verify that you are licensed before he'll even sell you anything. And so there is, and we did discover about 2 weeks ago, there's a guy in Germany, I believe, that he has a phone app called Hamlink, and then he's trying to say it's POC, but they're not the same. And that's all explained on the website. So if you're wanting to jump on that, these are just kind of some pictures. Jerry, there, KC0KW, his company takes care of all the media broadcast stuff at the Chiefs and the Royals. And, you know, lo and behold, we've got a couple of things there at Arrowhead that might be secret, but and so that's really what he likes to do. We always make fun of him. And then that got him in trouble. He's not supposed to climb. His wife sat in on one of my presentations. I was in the doghouse for a while. So, but anyway, I went through that pretty quick. Part that I really enjoy is any questions, anything you want to know, anything that's been dying to ask about Kansas City wide or anything. Oh, you guys are a quiet bunch.
I can make a couple of comments.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Back probably 2 years ago is when I got connected to Kansas. When I was actually getting in on the afternoon drive nets that they had and got to know the guys there. And then migrated over and got into the second cup of coffee net with David. David and I are actually really good friends. Been to his house 3 times.
Oh, cool.
And he's been to Oklahoma City twice and seen him twice. But I remember back when I first started listening to Kansas City Wide, you guys had a policy that I really liked. And when they didn't have a net, and I can't remember the best call sign in the past, that they would work from like 9 to 11. And their job was anybody that logged into the net that nobody answered, they would answer and talk to.
Yes.
And that really impressed me in the sense that it was like you can go there and even if you don't know anybody, they was going to grab you. And I've talked to Jerry, I've talked to Chris, I've talked to Lance.
Yeah.
I mean, Lance, I used to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and sit on the deck and talk to Lance while he's on his way to work.
Yeah.
So I found that the guys there were very friendly.
Very friendly. We try to be, and that is what we try to instill. It's a hard wire to walk because we, as the leaders of the organization, can instill what we want to, like our net control, people like that. But the individual users that come and go, that's very hard to control. And so we learned in the beginning, and that's how we came up with it's our house, it's our rules. And we do not tolerate any shenanigans. That's why we strongly, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion, don't talk, and it's a tough walk because current events, it's just human nature to want to talk about, but we've had the recent example that comes to mind, one of the troublemakers that is banned from the network, tried with one of our UK operators to get him to talk bad about the royal family. Now, the UK operator handled it correctly, politely, and just said 3 times, I'm not going to talk about that on the radio. And he got a little bit more blunt each time. And this guy just wouldn't let it go. And then he decided to take it to the politics that was going on here at home. And he hooked one, reeled the guy in, and it got way out of, And so stuff like that, we do not tolerate. even some bad operating etiquette will rise to our attention. And those folks, we'll try to work with them. We'll try to help them and try to say, hey, but some people have to learn the hard way. And, so we don't like banning people. We don't like blocking people, but we do have the reputation out there that we don't put up with much. And that has helped, generate this family type environment. And so, to us, it's simple. We had to come up with, when we started, we didn't have rules, as far as what you can do and can't do. We had to put rules on the website. Most people don't read them because we'll refer back to it and say, hey, we did it. And then they're like, it's, I can do whatever I want. Well, no, not on our network. So that has helped. But we try, and we really want to foster that welcoming. The gentleman you were talking about, George, I can't remember. He's passed away. He's a silent key now. I can't remember his call, but because that cost us a lot of grief. George was an interesting individual.
You can talk about anything.
And he was probably a little bit on the spectrum, and had a little different sounding voice. And some people liked him, some didn't. And, he's on there all day. No, he's doing it because we've asked him to do it. It's like, cut the guy some slack. And he really did. He did a tremendous blessing for us in the beginning in getting that set. And I can also say, even for the net control, I don't listen as much as I used to the network all the time. But even just the general day-to-day folks that are on there, you won't find a much more inviting and friendly place.
Well, if you're having a problem, throw it out there. Somebody will answer.
Yeah. And again, it's I do caution. I had a guy the other day. He's like, "Well, I talked to so-and-so. He told me to do this. Brick my radio." And blah 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 blah. I said, "Dude, you got to take everything with a grain of salt. It's like YouTube. You go out there and search it on YouTube. You'll come back with 20, and 10 are telling you to do it this way, and 5 are telling you to do it that way, and you pick the one that told you to do it that didn't line up with the other one, and it's like, but yeah, for the most part, it's helpful, but take it with a grain of salt, and because we do have a few that come and go that don't give the best advice, and get some folks in trouble. But you're gonna have that. But yeah, we're pretty proud of it. We've worked very hard at doing it. Like I said, we go to great lengths to not block people, but sometimes it's just inevitable. Some people you can't communicate with, some people you can't reason with, for various reasons. Because typically, if it's a technical thing, like our IT guys will catch, say somebody's setting up a hotspot and it's not quite right, and it's just keying up, no audio and things like that. They will just send them an email going, "Hey, we've restricted your access. We noticed what's going on." We'll give them a screenshot with the IP address and everything that's going on, and then it's always, "How can we help you?" And
I was shocked. Whenever you guys switched reflector, or was it a couple of years ago or something? Why I said reflector. I was monitoring that reflector and had it on all the time. And I got an email from Chris. "Hey, how do you like the reflectors working for you?" And I'm like, wow.
Yeah. They're pretty. Chris and Rick and Jeff has helped us on some stuff. I know enough, and I tell Jeff every time I get in there and start monkeying, I know enough to just get myself in trouble. But we're getting a little bit better at it. Jeff saved my bacon a couple times. So. But and we're always looking to improve. When we first started out, we didn't have a redundant system. We didn't have battery backup. We didn't have blah, 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 blah. And so now we've got 3 independent servers in the Kansas City area. Plus Chris has got one at his house. Rick's got one at his house. I've got one at my house. We haven't totally came up with a way for, like, if something goes down, for it automatically to switch to the other, but in a matter of minutes we can get it moved over. And just that customer service, because we don't want people out there talking bad about us, and we want the people to come and enjoy the network. That's why we did it. So it's been a lot of fun. It really has. Anything else? We got about 10 minutes before I got turned over to somebody else. Or if you think of something later, you can always reach us at feedback@kansascitywide.com. We do really good at same day replies. Most of us work for a living, so sometimes it's hard to respond during the day. But I think Jerry, David, Rick are the only ones that are retired. So, but we're pretty good about responding, pretty good about helping with issues. All right, did everybody get? I think we had some new people sneak in, so I owe them some stickers. But
We found some back here.
did I get you guys?
Yeah, they were back here already.
Okay, good.
I'll add in that locally, if you want to listen to Kansas City wide, we have the 444-35 repeater here in Claremore. In fact, just a few minutes ago, if you run Easy System Fusion, you heard it. Kansas City wide, loud and clear here. Over in Tulsa, we have the 443 repeater. It's on there most of the time. So between those two repeaters, you can make it Kansas City wide. Any of the DMR repeaters here that are on Brandmeister, you can go to 313-136 and get on there, which is funny because you heard it through the big cabin repeater. So there's lots of people active locally here on Kansas City wide. And then if you're crazy and jump off the deep end with technology, at noon today, we'll be operating M17 on the 444-35 repeater. And we actually have the M17 net headquartered out of here. We run that every Saturday. So it's kind of funny. I had somebody actually complain to me about a month ago. They're like, I really like Kansas City wide, but it gets blacked out at noon on Saturdays in Claremore. Can you do something about that? And I was like, it switched over to M17. And believe it or not, within like a day, they bought a CS7000 radio and got an M17. So it was good news on that, but it was kind of funny to hear that. But check it out here locally. It's a fun network. Lots of good people to talk to on there.
We need one down at OKC.
Yeah.
Badly.
I actually have a repeater.
Your wires X have been trying to hit it. I can't hit it.
That's because I've got it locked out. I will.
Yeah.
But
I don't think I'm too far away or my antenna's not right.
where you go?
I'm just at Wilshire Council.
That's the hall.
Yeah. And my antenna's not very high.
Yeah, my antenna's at between 80 and 90, but on that hill, but it still be a hall.
All right. Well, thank you all. Definitely
Thank you very much.
appreciate it.